Thank you all for coming out. This is the regular meeting of the school board. We're going to start with our public hearing on the 2021 tax levy. So if anybody is, there we go, back on. If anybody's here to speak on the tax levy, now's the time to do so. Hearing and seeing nobody, I can assume nobody's here to speak on that. So we will close the public hearing on that and move into our open meeting of the public meeting. We'll call that to order. Madam Secretary, if you note the roll, and we will stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. All right, moving on. I think this is going to be a wonderful presentation. I was looking forward to this since I saw it last Wednesday. This is going to be our recognitions and presentations, and this is the recognition of the NSSEO District 25 Shining Stars. So please take it away.
Dr. Leswicki is going to come up to the table with our Shining Stars, and also Molly Helm, and they will all present together tonight. Hi, friends. Hi.
Hi.
Good evening. We are proud to work in partnership with NSSEO as we implement inclusive practices across the district. I'd like to introduce some special guests that we have here with us today. To start, I'd actually like to introduce Dr. Judy Hackett, our superintendent of NSSEO, and Molly. And with me is Molly Dunn, the coordinator of vision programs for NSSEO. Last week at NSSEO's Board of Education meeting, 4 District 25 students were recognized as NSSEO's Shining Stars. We are so proud to have the opportunity to celebrate this honor with them this evening. Vavon, you can say, wave, say hello. Yoshica. Anastasia. Yeah, you can wave, honey. And Louise. These 4 students participate in the NSSEO's Vision Program. The Vision Program supports students' access to core curriculum through adaptation, skill acquisition, and modifications. It instructs students in specific goal areas as related to the students' visual impairments through the framework of the expanded core curriculum. The Vision services increase independence in all settings, and it provides increased opportunities for inclusive practices. Tonight, we are going to highlight 4 areas of the curriculum focus: self-determination, compensatory skills and sensory efficiency, orientation and mobility, assistive technology. Each one of these amazing students are going to be talking about those 4 areas tonight. It's not going to be me. First off is Yoshica.
Hi. So my name is Yoshica. So I like to so my favorite is a math. So it's so hard for me. So to know you're looking at. I use black paper and big letters. And I use my iPad and my Chromebook.
To listen to stories.
And to listen to stories.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Louise, you ready to take it away? Okay.
Hello, my name is Louise, and today I am going to teach you about two important areas of the expanded core curriculum: compensatory skills and sensory efficiency. Compensatory skills are necessary for accessing the core curriculum. Since most materials are presented in print, we need instruction in compensatory skills so that we can access the same information. Braille is one big example of a compensatory skill. It is important to the blind and the visually impaired because it's how we read and write. Braille is a combination of 6 raised dots that make up letters, numbers, and punctuation. It takes a very long time to learn. I've been learning Braille since I was 3 years old. Nemeth code is another compensatory skill. Nemeth is a Braille code made entirely for math. In Nemeth, they're the same symbols as print math, just in Braille, like the addition and subtraction signs, fraction bar, and decimals. The abacus is another math tool. On the abacus, we can do addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. You move the beads in certain patterns to set numbers and solve equations. Some other examples of compensatory skills are organizational skills, reading tactile graphics, and concept development, like using touch to feel an object or model. Sensory efficiency is using all of your senses to access the world. Sensory efficiency includes things like listening to audiobooks, using touch to tell 2 different kitchen utensils apart, smelling an apple pie, using a street sign to read a monocular. They're using a monocular to read a street sign. Sorry. If we didn't learn these 2 important areas of the ECC, then we couldn't access the core curriculum. Then we wouldn't be able to learn how to read, write, and solve math problems. If we didn't learn sensory efficiency and how to use our senses effectively, then we couldn't do much of anything at all. I hope you learned a lot about compensatory skills and sensory efficiency, and if you have any questions, you may ask after this presentation. Hi, my name is Anastasia, and today I'm going to be teaching you about O&M. O&M means orientation and mobility. Orientation and mobility helps people with visual impairments travel in the environment safely. Orientation is knowing where you are and where you want to go, and mobility is moving to get there. One of the main tools we use in O&M is a long white cane. The long white cane has 3 parts: the grip, the shaft, and the tip. With our canes, we use something called two-point touch, where you tap your cane from left to right. With our canes, we need to make sure that we walk in step in order to find any obstacles in front of us. That means when the cane is on the left side, my right foot is forward and the other way around. We need O&M because, another tool we've been using in O&M is an iPad with Google Maps and other accessible GPS apps to walk routes outside. We need O&M because we need to learn how to travel safely. We learn different strategies to travel inside and outside. That means feeling feedback from our canes, listening to our environment, or using our vision. We need O&M skills to find classes in our school, walk routes, go to the grocery store, and eventually get to our jobs. In O&M, we've also been practicing crossing streets in the neighborhood by Westgate. I can listen to a blocker car in my nearest lane of parallel traffic, or listen for the intersection to be all quiet. I flag my cane by the truncated domes, which are the bumpy things at the end of the sidewalk, so cars know I'm there and going to cross. I'm excited to learn about how to walk further routes. I hope you learned a lot today. If you have any questions, ask us later.
Okay, hi everybody. My name is Vivan, and today I'm going to be telling you a lot about assistive technology. Assistive technology, or assistive tech, is tech which is accessible to blind people. I use assistive technology to complete homework, classwork, and lots more. One big example of assistive tech is using a screen reader. Screen readers are software which read you what is on the screen. Some devices that have screen readers are an iPad with VoiceOver or a computer with JAWS software. To use an iPad with VoiceOver, you use your fingers and perform different gestures on the screen. For example, I might do a 3-finger swipe right or a 1-finger double tap. They all do different things. To use a laptop with JAWS software, almost all the key commands involve the key caps lock. For example, the command caps lock A reads everything that's on the screen. Or a piece of assistive technology might have a refreshable braille display. A refreshable braille display is a display with metal pins that you can read braille with. It refreshes every time something new pops up. In class and at home, I use the Braille Note Touch Plus. It is like a computer, iPad, and Brailler all mixed in one. It has a protective case, a keyboard for typing, a refreshable braille display to read, different buttons along the edges, a strap to carry it with, and under the keyboard, a touch screen. I use my Braille Note to read and listen to books, create documents, send Google Forms, send emails, and read emails, and use docs and other things. I hope you learned a lot about assistive technology. And if you have any questions, you can ask us after this.
Aren't they amazing? Our amazing shining stars. So congratulations, and thank you for recognizing them this evening.
Everybody's standing for you guys.
Thank you, everyone, and thank you, families, for being here tonight. We really appreciate it. Amazing students.
Yeah, I also wanted to echo that. Thank you so much. I learned so much from you guys, Vivan, Yoshica, Anastasia, and Louise. I have to do more research. I think I'm going to come back, Dr. Hackett, if it's okay, to ask questions. Like I think all the Google Forms I heard about and the organizational skills. I'll definitely have to come back to ask more questions. But truly, all the information I learned today about Braille and compensatory skills and O&M and the abacus. Wow, sensory efficiencies, so much. You've given us so much to kind of think about and learn, and that was an incredible, incredible presentation. Thank you.
Yes, thank you for coming, and just wonderful, wonderful, inspiring. Thank you so much. And if you want, you can stay for the rest of the meeting, or if you want to go home and enjoy the rest of the evening here. But thank you for coming. Congratulations to our shining stars. We're going to move on to Olive Mary Stitt and Windsor Elementary presenting to the board tonight. So please, come on up. Then the crowd goes wild.
Good evening. Ooh, I feel like I have to get close here. Good evening. Thank you to those of you that were able to join us last week for a tour at Olive. For those of you that were not able to join us, there's a standing open invitation. Okay, I'm going to just figure this out. Okay. I'm going to hold it. Okay. So, starting off, our theme this year at Olive is All Are Welcome, Many Identities, One School. Our students are learning that our identity is all of the wonderful things that make up who we are as people. Each year, our teachers are encouraged at the beginning of the year to sign up for myself or our assistant principal to come and read to their class and do an activity while their teacher can go and observe a colleague teaching. This year, we've been reading the book, The Day You Begin, which highlights the similarities and differences of students in a classroom. A few of the things that we are excited about this year is our volunteers. I know there was a call out to the community, and the OMS families stepped up. We have over 40 parents that volunteer each month in our LMC. They take different shifts and help check out books, put books back on the shelves, and do whatever else it is that we need them to do. And we have 13 parents that have joined us on different days of the week for recess. They are there in the rain, in the sun, and as we had on Monday and Tuesday, the freezing cold. So we're so incredibly grateful to our parent community. We're also excited about a grant that we were awarded at the end of last year, the ABC 25 membership grant. We were able to purchase approximately 150 culturally diverse books. Those books were at various reading levels. They were distributed to all of our classrooms so that students can enjoy reading books that may represent them. And finally, coming up next week, we will have our annual story time with the principals on the last day before the break. We're sticking with our theme this year, and we'll be reading 2 books that celebrate differences. Our students will also be making holiday cards that will be given to the Wheeling Township Meals on Wheels program. We're excited. This is the 2nd year that we've been partnering with the Meals on Wheels for the holidays. You can probably see our enrollment up there. We're at 630 students and continuing to grow. So we are full of lots of life and laughter and fun and learning. Thank you.
All right, Windsor. This year, our theme is Throwback to Our Why, and our why is our students in our community that we love so much. After last year, we felt we needed a reset, and so this year we are throwing back to before the pandemic and bringing back old traditions for both students and staff. We are truly throwing back to our why. If you notice, our t-shirts were designed to have a vintage flair, and if you happen to be a Saved by the Bell fan, you may recognize the design from the Bayside Tigers t-shirts. Windsor has a very large staff, and we've been together for many years. And so on the back of our t-shirt, you'll also see the hashtag #WeAreWindsor to remind us how important we are to each other. This year, we're excited to return to small group work and hands-on activities. Our teachers are happy to be engaging students in guided reading groups, and our students are excited to be working on hands-on activities again. Something coming up in addition to our reading on the day before our break with all of our students, we'll also be doing some STEAM activities. We're kind of calling it some Windsor Winter Camp activities. So that'll go along with that hands-on activity excitement that our students are having. We are also excited to have our volunteers back in the building. Our PTA has been amazing. We have our LMC volunteers back, and we have several clubs up and running, such as Green Team, Guitar Club, Chess Club, and in January, we'll be starting our Junior Great Books Club. We also have welcomed in mystery readers and kindergarten center volunteers. And we are excited that all of our students and staff are engaged in our new curriculum. We are hard at work with implementing new curriculum like literacy footprints, building fact fluency, and ruler. Windsor staff have been participating in rich professional development to ensure proper implementation of these programs. Finally, Windsor typically fluctuates between 450 and 500 total students. This year, we are at 554, with several registrations in the works for students to begin after winter break. Thank you.
And thank you to Ms. Davis and Mrs. Anastasia for presenting the board with some Olive and Windsor swag. I think the board's going to end up like me. You're going to have to make a blanket out of all of the school gear that you have. We really appreciate it, and thank you both so much. And I see you have many supporters that have come to represent as well, so we appreciate that.
Yes, thank you. It's monthly now. I enjoy seeing the teachers and the staff in the back. It brings a refreshing energy to these meetings, and I hope we keep that up. It's wonderful. So thank you all for coming out and being with us here on a Thursday evening.
And again, you're welcome to stay, but you're also welcome to go home and have dinner.
And I'm going to add to that, President Philippak, if that's okay. You know, as the board has been going out to these buildings, the positive culture is so apparent, and it's really inviting the school environment. So thank you for having us as the board. And also, I wanted to give a shout out to the custodians in your buildings, people like Jimmy and Bob at Olive. Like these buildings, when we've walked through the buildings, they're truly, they're sparkling, they're amazing, they look great, and your students are so super focused and super engaged. So we really enjoyed our trips out to your schools. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you. All right, while you're walking out, I'm going to read the boring script to be read before public comment. We're moving on to public comment here. The opportunity to speak to the board is provided for members of the public who have a comment to make about business of the board. The board appreciates hearing from stakeholders and values your thoughts and questions. As the board strives to make the best decisions for the district, public input can be helpful. In order for the board to reserve sufficient time to conduct its business and operate its meeting in the spirit of civility and decorum, speakers are expected to follow the following guidelines. Address the board only at the time provided on the agenda and only after being recognized by the board president. Identify yourself and be brief. Your comments must be limited to a maximum of 3 minutes. The board may shorten this allotted time in order to conserve time to allow the maximum number of people the opportunity to speak. Please be respectful and courteous. The board requests that you do not make statements that are personally disrespectful or condescending to members of the board or staff. The board typically does not respond to comments or attempt to answer questions during public comment period, but we do listen intently and appreciate the input from our community. And with that, we'll start with Tom Kopaz.
And we ask that people that are speaking come up and have a seat in front of one of the microphones, please.
Yes, please wrap up.
There are over 130 publications affirming that fact, and even the ministers who simply had to admit on the FOIA request, they do not have a single confirmed case where COVID-recovered individuals transmitted the virus to someone else. Juxtaposed with hundreds of thousands of confirmed cases. Leaders do not have permissions to take charge. They take charge if there's something wrong, and they go with it. So I ask you, board members, that you be leaders and you take charge of this best situation that we need. Thank you very much. And with that, also Merry Christmas and Happy New Year.
Thank you. Same to you. All right, next up we have Mary Ann Corcoran.
Hi. As you know, the Surgeon General announced the emergence of declining mental health in children. Well, we've been talking about this a lot longer than that. In emergency rooms in 38 children's hospitals across the nation, the number of suicide and self-injury cases in the first 3 quarters of 2021 was 47% higher among 5 to 8-year-olds and 182% higher among 9 to 12-year-olds than they were for the same period in 2016. Why do we continue to isolate children? We know this is detrimental to their health. The answer I keep receiving is that it's for their safety. So let me tell you how I see safety. If my child and 99.999% of other healthy children in this country get COVID, we're going to see these following symptoms: nothing, fatigue, fever, upset stomach, digestive issues, runny nose. Now, if a child becomes depressed during isolation and chaos, here are the following symptoms: death by suicide, attempted suicide, self-harm, including but not limited to cutting and drug use, low self-esteem, violent outbursts, agoraphobia, eating disorders, anxiety, and many, many, many more. As a parent, I want to know how you elected board members, here because you were successful enough in your campaigns to convince enough people that you are here to voluntarily serve the students and families in District 25. How are you addressing the safety of my children's mental health that is far more deadly than COVID? Have you consciously decided that a child getting COVID is worse than the suffering they endure on a daily basis, wondering if they will be quarantined, not receive their assignments because they're in quarantine academy, have to miss their friends and activities, all because someone else in the class might have COVID? Dryden reportedly has an outbreak, according to CCDPH, 3 students in 1 classroom that tested positive. My question to the board and you, Dr. Vine, as I asked in my email, why is their only option to stay in school by doing SHIELD? Why are no other tests accepted? It seems very suspicious to think that all other tests are insufficient while SHIELD is ideal when it is administered by a parent volunteer versus a doctor or a nurse. Why would you not stand up to this biased rule for the sake of our students and families? When do you as a board realize that COVID is not going away and you are doing more harm than good following these arbitrary rules for quarantine and contact tracing? Do you honestly believe that the 3 feet and 15 minutes are science? If they were, then Florida's numbers would be higher than ours, not lower. You are the lucky 7 to be given the power to make change. You are the lucky 7 that signed up for implementing local control. You are the lucky 7 that should be thinking about safety of students on a much bigger scale than a positive SHIELD test that continues to pad the pockets of our governor. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Next, we have Kristen Keel.
Hi, I'm Kristen Kyle. I'm a parent of a 7th grader at South Middle School. I'm here regarding the decision to cancel the Taft Trip. As a parent who has had 2 other children attend Taft, I can tell you this was one of the highlights of their middle school years. My 2 older children still bring up stories at the dinner table. I'm sad and frustrated that District 25 has made the decision to cancel Taft, which is not supposed to be until April of 2022. Our district has disappointed me over the last 20 months, using COVID as an excuse to cancel experiences for our children instead of taking the time to come up with solutions on how to safely continue these great programs within our district. As a parent, I'm wondering, When will this end? How much more are we going to take away from our children before we as a community and this board are going to start pushing back and making decisions for our children? Taft has always been an optional trip. Your child does not need to attend if you don't feel comfortable. According to Dr. Bynes' email, which was only sent to 7th grade parents, Taft would be extremely difficult to execute due to the small confines of bunk cabins, dining hall, and indoor learning spaces. It sounds like once again, she's blaming this decision on COVID. We are going to continue to cancel things to protect an age group that doesn't need it. They are children in a very low risk group. We need to let them live, enjoy these experiences. We need to stop this cancel culture we've created in our district, especially when the science and data don't support the cancellations. We have tools, vaccines, along with emerging groups of treatments, to turn this into a manageable virus, similar to the flu. The bonus is our community has a high vaccination rate. More than 74% of our community is vaccinated. I'm well aware that different people face different levels of COVID risk. I understand that and recognize that, and therefore, as Taft has always been, a parent decision to send your child. And as a parent, I'm asking for that right back. When are we going to start looking at local stats and stats of COVID in children under the age of 17 and let them get back to a normal life? We need to stop putting this virus in control. I'm so tired of people in leadership making decisions that are no longer following local data, science, or the other 90% of the United States. Let that sink in. We continue to be in the minority, no longer following logic, but continuing to go along with strict and no longer necessary rules set by a few people in leadership roles. Who's suffering? Our children. When are you going to start questioning these decisions and start taking a stand for our children? That's why you're on this board, right? To be the voice for the community and our children? Start to be that person. Be who you say you are, the one we voted to this board. You are the sum of your actions, not your words. Start taking action for our children. If you wait to act until everything is perfect, our children are going to be lifelong spectators.
Thank you. Next, we have Karen Wolf.
Good evening. Okay, here we go. It's been said that kids have been forced to deal with a lot because of coronavirus. I would say that isn't exactly true. I would say kids have to deal with a lot because of adults' response to coronavirus. Adults feel better putting covers on kids' faces. Adults feel better testing kids incessantly. And adults feel better kicking kids out of school because they were within a few feet of another kid. Adults feeling better and feeling safer doesn't mean anyone actually is safer.
Ms. Wolf, can you please wear
I'm
your
sorry,
mask?
yeah.
Thank you.
It's super hard to breathe. Okay. And that's the problem. The response to coronavirus has been solely to make people feel safe, not actually be safe. I could go on and on with examples of inconsistent, arbitrary, and illogical measures to show this to be true. So feelings and money are why kids are still being put through all this 20 months later, with no end in sight. Not because coronavirus is out of control or because we don't have preventatives or treatments, but because funding is tied to these measures and feelings are ruling over facts. But parents are still fighting for truth and reason and goodness to win out. One lawsuit pending and more could be on the way. Most of you made it clear you don't want local control, so I'm asking you to at least be consistent. For example, the governor didn't mandate hosting vaccine clinics, yet you made that decision. Please stop promoting something that is only authorized for emergency use and still has up to 6 years, I don't know if you're all aware of that, 6 years of trials to prove its safety. Schools are not healthcare facilities and therefore have no place promoting or advising medical decisions. And now you're looking at signing a year-long contract for more COVID testing. That doesn't help students. Stopping the hyper-focus and irrational anxiety would be much more helpful. If we tested for flu or any other virus this much, those would be a pandemic every year too. At best, you're losing the trust of the community, and at worst, you've already lost it. And you're continuing to discriminate based on vaccination status, despite admission from the CDC itself that that has no bearing on transmission. If those are the health experts you're choosing to listen to, why are you now ignoring their statements and insisting on policies that are by definition unequal treatment? Saying that you're just following orders does not absolve you of responsibility. Implementing different quarantine procedures for different students makes you just as guilty as the agency that wrote the procedures. Lastly, time and time again, we've asked for a metric. Saying you're continually looking at the situation isn't getting us any closer to resolution. And we have no reason to believe you aren't just waiting for IDPH to tell you what to do. There's no transparency, there's no goal. Is there any other program throughout the district with no goal and no measures for success? I think probably not. So why is it okay when it comes to mitigations? We only need 4 of you, from what I understand, 4 of you to choose to make decisions on a local level. That is, after all, the whole point of a school board. So let's make that happen. Thank you. Merry Christmas.
Thank you. Eva Wojcik.
Good evening. Today I brought 2 books that are on the list of books for first grade as part of the district's social-emotional program called Ruler. Let me read something from those books. This is an illustration from the first book depicting Ku Klux Klan in action. From Rosa's earliest childhood, she could remember scary nights when the Ku Klux Klan, a band of hateful white men dressed in white hooded robes, would ride past their farm shooting off rifles to frighten the black people. Rosa knew that the Klan had burned churches and beaten, tortured, and lynched many black people. There were times when Rosa's family slept in their clothes so they could run if the Klan decided to burn their house down in the middle of the night. So I know that this description would have given my 6-year-old daughter a real nightmare. And the word lynched also appears on the second page. And there's also a talk about her grandfather keeping a shotgun. The second book talks about a mouse who wrote the following poem for her new brother, whom she initially hated. Julius, the germ of the world, by me, said Lily. Once upon a time, said Lily, there was a baby. His name was Julius. Julius was really a germ. Julius was like dust under your bed. If he was a number, he would be 0. If he was a food, he would be a raisin. 0 is nothing. A raisin tastes like dirt. The end, said Lily. Even my older daughters were appalled when I read this to them and said they don't want her little sister to hear such a language. I asked the Ruler program coordinator to remove these books plus 1 other book from the list, or let me opt out from the program. I was given an option to opt my child out from the social emotional learning blocks at Ivy, and that's what I did. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Next, Brittany Polaronis.
Hello, I am coming here to support the plan for full-day kindergarten. I've spoke about this at so many board meetings. I was so happy to see this in the plan, and something that I believe the team has worked very hard on, so thank you to everybody for putting that together. This community desperately needs full-day kindergarten for so many reasons. One in particular that I have seen is that we are inviting more and more families into our community with different income levels. And a full-day kindergarten program, which was pointed out even in the information packet, does state that full-day kindergarten for low-income families is something that will give more opportunities for more people to come into the Arlington Heights community. We are one of the few districts in the area that do not offer this, and we will continue to see families move away from this district because of that lack of a full-day kindergarten. I would ask the board to continue to ask questions, but to focus on getting this done and to promote the benefits of full-day kindergarten to the community. But again, what enrollment numbers are we starting with? I think we've all seen that enrollment has changed, and we need to continue to look at what it actually is going to look like. In particular, the breakouts between the schools like Ivy Hill that have a lot of space versus schools like Westgate that have no space. And it goes back to something that the district needs to focus on as well, and that is bringing children back to their home schools. If we had more students back at Ivy that doesn't have such an advanced special eds group like a Westgate, perhaps we could open up the doors for more space at schools like Westgate. So I continue to urge the board to get this done, get full-day kindergarten as an option and a choice for our families. Thank you.
Well, thank you. And having no more submissions, we can move to online.
Thank you. I kind of lost track of time, but I think we've 10 minutes. Thank you. So these are the public comments that were submitted today by noon. All comments submitted by the start of the meeting will be posted on the website tomorrow. The first one is from Agnes Zapat. The district could not provide explanation for my inquiry why individuals who are fully vaccinated and remain asymptomatic are not required to quarantine, given that both vaccinated and unvaccinated transmit the virus. I was also wondering why any child who is unvaccinated but has long-term natural immunity from a previous infection is exempted from quarantine only if the infection occurred in the last 90 days. I was told by a district person to obtain answers to my questions from IDPH. While I'm waiting to hear back from IDPH and CDC, I did my own research, and what I found indicates that the quarantine rules were established without any scientific justification. The following articles prove the discrimination against unvaccinated students and those who have recovered from COVID. CDC admits they don't collect data on natural immunity, and they don't know of anyone who recovered from COVID and became reinfected and transmitted the virus to someone else when reinfected. And then there are articles attached. From Marta Denisiak, Dr. Bine, I do not support your decision to host a vaccination clinic. Are you not aware of what the experts say? Here is just one of many examples. Vaccine expert warns of COVID vaccinatino catastrophe, and there is a link. From Mia Worry, I'm disappointed to see the letter of dissent regarding the mask mandate on the schedule to be discussed. As a parent of 2 SD25 students, I strongly oppose any such letter. This is not a good use of the board's time and is not the view of the majority of School District 25 parents or staff. Further, such a letter is against the advice of the board's attorney and is quite frankly contrary to common sense. From Agnes Piersa, the COVID-19 positive case school community notification that parents receive states, quote, "We are following guidance from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, as well as the Illinois Department of Public Health and the Cook County Department of Public Health for best practices and procedures to protect everyone's health," unquote. Yet our district cannot provide scientific basis for those best practices and procedures. Our district is just following guidance. Our district is not claiming masks are effective in preventing COVID-19 transmissions or infections. Our district is simply following the executive order. This is the best answer our district can give because such scientific evidence simply doesn't exist. Why are we still wearing masks if we have the vaccine? If it's so important to get everyone vaccinated, why are the following people totally exempt from the vaccine mandate? All U.S. Senators and House of Representatives, plus all congressional staff. 6,000 White House employees. All employees of Pfizer, 2,500, Moderna, 1,500, and Johnson & Johnson, 120,000. 15,000 CDC workers and 14,000 FDA employees. A lot of things related to COVID rules being forcefully imposed on us doesn't make any sense. Yet our district is doing everything to make us believe that's not the case, willing to sacrifice students and school staff instead of doing what it takes to truly protect everyone's health. The district's claim that safety of the students is our #1 priority has no meaning. What must happen to make our school board get to take care of students and staff instead of blindly following guidance without any scientific data? And from Jill Larson, while I support full-day kindergarten, I am not in favor of the current proposal, which would reduce the specials to a mobile cart and interventions or special services to a hallway. Our students who receive special services should not have the added pressure or fear of another student or teacher hearing what is going on behind the panels. A closed room is the only appropriate option. As for the specials, the arts have been shown to be hugely impactful on education. To reduce them to CART is sending a message that these classes are not important. Lastly, we ask so much of our teachers already. Let's not take away their lounge area too. There has to be a better option for this moving to full-day kindergarten without making these hugely impactful changes. Thank you. And I think I have time for two more. Jennifer Borrell, regarding agenda item 14C, I'm writing to support the adoption of full-day kindergarten in District 25. I recognize that plans are still tentative, but I encourage the district to include the community in decisions around this. I'd also like to discourage using tuition as a way to pay for full-day kindergarten. We don't need to further the disparities that currently exist in our community by enabling those with economic means to pay for full-day kindergarten to get ahead, while those without economic means fall further behind. I believe that any costs should be shared more evenly across the community. And regarding agenda item 14D, I encourage you all to lay this idea to rest. If the board does not feel that discussions to develop an off-ramp for masking are happening between ISBE, IDPH, and districts, a letter expressing a desire to begin a thoughtful discussion of off-ramping would be a suitable alternative. And then from Margaret Waz, I saw other school districts who are posting the following data: % of positive cases who are fully vaccinated, % of positive cases who are not fully vaccinated. Why is our district not providing this information?
All right, thank you, Dr. Bryan. I know that's quite a mouthful to read on. I appreciate it. Moving on, we have the approval of the consent agenda items, and this is an action item, so I need a motion.
Mr. President?
Yes, Anisha.
I recommend that the Board of Education approve those items on the consent agenda as follows. A, personnel report and addendum to the personnel report. B, treasurer's reports. C, invoices. D, regular and closed session meeting minutes of November 11th, 2021. E, superintendent professional organizations and professional development leave.
Thanks, Anisha. Do I have a second?
Second.
Ooh, I think Greg beat Chad by a second. No pun intended. Any questions that already haven't been raised?
Who was the second? I'm sorry.
Greg.
Greg.
Hearing no questions, we'll take this to a vote, and we'll start with Greg just to expedite that process.
Yes.
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 All right, motion passes 6-0. All right, communications to and from the board members. So we'll start with NSSEO, and seeing what we saw today with our shining stars, I don't know how I'm going to follow that with anything that's comparable. But just the meeting last Wednesday really pointed out that our NSSEO partnership and our Shining Stars specifically faced a lot of challenges in the last 2 years of what we've all been going through. And they really, to excel and to be Shining Stars in this kind of world we're living in is spectacular. So I applaud them again, and I think we all should applaud them again, because it's just fantastic what NSSEO and our students are doing over there. I always bring up the Timber Ridge Gymnasium project. If you haven't seen it, the big pile of dirt is gone. So they are expecting a ribbon cutting probably January to February to kind of walk us through and show what's being done there. And seeing the old gym and then seeing pictures of this new gym, it's going to just, I mean, you could probably put the new gym or the old gym in a corner of the new gym. So it's going to be wonderful for the students over there. So stay tuned on that, and we'll have an update for when everyone is invited to see that new facility. ISB, that's Anisha.
Yeah, it was really wonderful after a hiatus from the ISBE Conference. It was great to be in person with school board members across the state of Illinois for this learning opportunity. And the conference kicked off with a great speaker, Mr. D, who was really inspiring, and I think a lot of educators may already follow him about really authentically connecting with students, so it was great for school board members to hear. And we went to different sessions. There were many different sessions, and some that our board attended were fostering positive intra-board connections and relationships, and cultivating positive climate and culture in our community, and unconscious biases in education, and the ISB resolutions, the convening happened, and that was really great to see. It was digitally done and really effective and efficient in all the resolutions that school board members from across and school boards from across the state have passed on to ISB to advocate for us. And another celebration that happened, that one of our fellow surrounding board members from District 21, Phil Pritzker, won the Best Board Member Award from the state. And it's really neat because as school board members, we have colleagues from different boards that we lean on and talk to as well. And so it's great that just a fellow across right here by District 21 is somebody that we continue to learn from. So an excellent, excellent event and conference. And ISB is also hosting the next a next book club, and the book is Crucial Conversations. And some of us will be participating in that to continue to learn about how to be effective leaders in our community.
Thank you, Anisha. Moving on to EdRed. Rich.
Yeah, good evening, everyone. This past week, 2 weeks ago, I think it was the meeting with EdRed, and the last one for the year, so the next one will be late January with a dinner on the 50th anniversary of EdRed on the 31st of January. One of the speakers at the recent EdMed meeting was our County Assessor Fritz Kagi, where he talked about really property taxes, and it's really on the subject of one of the conversations today. And one of his advocacies is to really maybe change the way we look at property taxes, and so I'll just maybe highlight a couple of his points. There is an essay that he referenced as well. It is available online should anyone really want to read it. But really in Illinois, current property taxes account for 63% of the funding for schools. So we are really a state that focuses on property taxes to fund our schools. And what that creates, according to his kind of discussion, was an unfortunate bias because the property taxes are based on physical property. So if there's a physical property there, you get taxed on it. If there's no physical property there, there's no tax. But really, when you start looking at the economy of what has happened in the last 2 years with COVID, is there's a massive shift. So before you would think, hey, we'd go shopping at Woodfield or shopping at Ranthurst. And nowadays, a lot of people are just going to Amazon, going to online. So the physical necessity of a physical location is no longer there. So a good example would be of the decrease in property taxes is the effect of office buildings in downtown Chicago. They're empty. Property values are shrinking in the city of Chicago. Another good example would be Allstate. And they sold their entire campus for $232 million. Why? Because they're not going to be there anymore. So that's an impact to the overall taxes. The other piece he talked about is because we're so focused on property taxes, we tend to have higher property taxes. Ann Gillespie has talked about that. Tom Walker has talked about that. And really, that higher property tax leads to depressing investments and growth in a particular area. The higher your property taxes, the less investment and growth. In fact, they looked at the 10 top communities in Illinois, and I'll read his quote right here. He said, the communities with the 20 highest property tax rates exceed the other 110 communities by 3 to 5 times, even though the level of education funding per pupil is comparable or less. So what he says is, if you look at the top 20 communities that are taxed at the highest level, those 20 communities are taxed at so much higher level than other communities, than the 110 communities in Cook County. Guess where Arlington Heights is? Just guess. What? No, we're number 20. 20 at 10.2% is what our tax rate is. So that's just something to think about. Now, in Arlington Heights alone, residential tax makeup across from the assessed value makes up 68% versus 32% of commercial. So, and that's based on the 2020 municipal tax-based data, which he covered as well. So he comes up with a solution, basically, is increase Title I funding. He points out in his essay that if we were to increase it by $300 million, we would reduce property taxes by 10%. And one of his, again, in his essay, he talked about it and spoke about it, that we need to switch away from asset-based funding to income-generated model, which makes sense, but on a personal note, I think, well, isn't that income tax? We get taxed against it. So that would be his solution, is basically switch to an income generating. So if that asset is generating income, you tax the income, not the asset. So it would be a complete switch. So that was the fun of that particular meeting and discussion. The other part, just to point out, we've talked a lot about House Bill, or we've discussed House Bill 2778, and at the time, that would provide for basically limitless COVID-19 coverage for our teachers and staff and contractors, things of that nature. That, on the last day, that was not going to move to the governor's office. It was moved to the governor's office. So that has now been sitting in the governor's office since November 30th, and we'll see what the governor does with that particular mandate. That's all I have.
Well, thank you, Rich. Stacy, do you have anything to add?
Because I believe last meeting I shared with you that there was a projection we may not see tax bills, the fall tax bills next year, due till as late as December or January. The Cook County assessor said that his goal would be to get them absolutely no later than November 1st. So a little earlier.
All right, thank you. Moving on to board governance framework, and that's me. I will go with a code of conduct number 11, and this kind of goes on to what recently the ISBE Conference. I will model continuous learning and work to ensure good governance by taking advantage of board member development opportunities, such as those sponsored by my state and national school board associations, and encourage my fellow board members to do the same. And I think that's timely because we all kind of came back from that conference and sharing stories with everyone and kind of refreshed on why we became board members, and feeling good about you said colleagues in the field and just each other as well. So yes, let's keep doing that board development like we've always been doing. Next is other board communication. Does anybody have anything they'd like to add that hasn't been recognized already?
Mr. President?
Hey, Greg.
Yeah, I had the opportunity last week to catch a concert at Thomas, and want to extend a congratulations to the students of the Olive and TMS Wind Ensemble. They had a fantastic performance that day. And I bring it up here because these kids are really the model of resilience and grit. I mean, they have persevered despite all the challenges for those Olive kids learning an instrument in our COVID times, or, for those wind ensemble kids of, this is their first performance in so long since, the start of the pandemic. And also, a congratulations to the parents, because they really had have that internal belief to support the arts in our district. So thank you and congratulations to those parents as well.
Thank you, Greg.
Yeah, on November 13th, I attended the Martin Luther King Jr. Remembrance and Commemoration Dinner, the 52nd annual dinner, and it was really neat. At that event, District 25 was acknowledged for their support of equity work, and so that was really nice to see, and it was a wonderful event that was organized and attended by hundreds of people. I lose count, it was a pretty large room at the Renaissance here in Schaumburg.
Thank you. Going down the line, I guess I'll add November 28th, Dirty Nellies hosted Future Stars, which are not necessarily District 25 students today, but they are older, and two groups primarily made up of District 25 students. David's House and Collision played, which were fantastic. I mean, they played everything from Steely Dan to Stevie Wonder. It was excellent, and to see what our kids are doing now. I know Windsor mentioned they have a guitar club. They've taken that and just, amplified it tremendously. So it was a spectacular event, and this is hosted once a month, this Future Stars event. It's on a Sunday evening. It's family friendly, so if anybody has the opportunity to go and see our kids, hopefully they'll get us backstage at one point and have a good time. But yeah, it was a wonderful event. All right, hearing nothing else, we'll move on. The student learning has nothing. Oh, no, I'm sorry, communications to board members. We'll start with PTA, Nicole Barbieri.
Yeah, Mr. President, Nicole was not able to be here. She's actually at a great event for her son or daughter at a high school event, so we're excited for Nicole to be there with her daughter. The PTA report, the council received a total of 46 submissions this year for the Reflections Art Program theme of I Will Change the World by, and they received artwork from 7 local PTAs, Dryden PTA, Greenbrier, Olive Mary, Stitt, South, Thomas, Westgate, and Windsor in 4 art categories: dance, film, literature, and visual arts. And this year, council will not be hosting a showcase like in prior years. However, each student artist will be recognized via a custom participation certificate and ribbon. And a total of 31 entries from the Arlington Heights Council PTAs will advance to Northwest Cook region. The region advancement should be announced in late January 2022, and Illinois PTA Reflections winners will be announced in March. And they are so proud of all the student artists and their willingness to explore the arts and share their artistic talents about how they will change the world. Thank you to all the PTA volunteers, PTA leaders, parents, guardians, school admin, teachers, staff, school board members for supporting the arts in District 25. We couldn't deliver this program without everyone's support.
Thank you, Anisha. Moving on to ABC 25, Gina.
So for ABC 25, the grants were closed. The grants have been evaluated, and the notification to the teachers, staff, and admins who submitted the grants will happen before we break for the holiday. I will offer that we funded, it felt really good. We funded a lot of grants this year, and it is coming up to right around $36,000 worth of grants that will be funded. That will be notifying teachers. It's, you know, an early Christmas present, if you will. In addition to that, we have a few schools that are just shy, so if everyone would please sign up to be a member of ABC 25 and share with your neighbors, friends, families, or anybody else you know. The schools each get a school grant if they hit their target, and we have just a few schools that are just under their target, and we're hoping to get there before we break for the holiday. Last but not least, thank you to everyone who submitted artwork for the t-shirt for the Get Burbed Challenge, which will occur in person in April this year. We'll be notifying winners and voting. You'll see some voting coming up. It'll be on the website, and we encourage everybody to vote and have your voice heard. But thank you to all the students who did submit and participate. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Gina. Moving on, ATA, Allison Berg. I guess we weren't loud enough. Ladies and gentlemen, Allison Berg.
I was looking for this, which is already here, ready for me. Awesome. Okay. Hello, everybody. Hello, everybody. Good evening. Thank you for having me. I am so excited to sit here today to put the spotlight on Patton, and I am super excited that I have a huge Patton cheering section as well today, so that's always very exciting. So let's talk a little bit about what's going on at Patton School. There we go. All right, so kindergartners at Patton have learned to code with Bebot robots. They had to draw a number and add one more and program the robot to the number. Mrs. Pullman and Mrs. Schatz's classes were making a class gingerbread house, which is what you see behind me. First, students created their own design after studying photos of gingerbread houses, and next, each class made a plan and assigned each student a job. The results are very festive, and they will also be celebrating the 70th day of school on Thursday. And here's some more.
Oh, was it a
rip?
fall apart?
It ripped,
Okay.
so we.
All right, so put that down. And you're gonna come out. You're gonna. Oh, look at that! Come hold it. Come hold it. How about you let go of this? You can have 2 hands, and I'll start getting some.
And then we have some gingerbread men on display. Very festive. gingerbread houses as well. It's like we're right there at Patton School, you guys. Walking down the halls. Looks good. Okay, and I think I got one more of the Bebots. There they go. And these are the Bebots, which are so cool if you've never seen these in action. The kids are so excited, super engaging.
It was history.
Okay, moving on. First grade at Patton School is learning about different celebrations, traditions, and customs across cultures. They're also talking about ways to spread kindness. Let's take a peek at one class learning the dreidel game. Second grade is busy applying what they learned during their fiction school-wide unit to a Jan Brett author study. Students enjoyed extending the mitten with a mitten project. Students did a great job following directions, and in math, they just finished up their addition, subtraction, and bar modeling units, and students have enjoyed their guided math small groups and centers. And here's some pictures of our second graders in action. There they are doing their center activities. Place value. Oh, these are our third graders, I believe. Third graders are diving deep into multiplication and division. They're building their fact fluency and using their new toolkit, thank you very much, provided by the district. This toolkit provides math talks, games, and critical thinking skills, and there you can see them in action. Fourth graders are researching a state from the Northeast or Southeast and creating an Adobe Spark video or web page or 3D model to show historical events that happen in a particular state, and there you see them in action. Gym, these are fun. There's videos for the PE class, which I especially like. Gymnastics is a favorite unit for Patton students. They have been having fun while developing balance, muscle strength, and flexibility, and here are some Patton friends in action. Here we go. There's video. Hang on. There we go.
I want to see a log roll.
Demonstrating the log roll. And some awesome vault work. All right, moving on to music. Kindergartners have had a great time learning and playing the singing game, The Old Gray Cat. Kindergarten musicians also love using scarves to keep steady to the beat. And kindergartners love seeing if Mr. Whitaker will catch anyone moving when the clock stops ticking. And here's some pictures of some little mice creeping, playing their games. I think there's a picture of the kindergartners with the scarves as well. There they go, kindergartners with their scarves. Patton's third graders have really enjoyed adding boom whackers to the dance of the Sugar Plum Fairy from the Nutcracker. Fourth grade musicians are currently bucket drumming to the African song Sing Noel, and they are loving all the drumming patterns they get to learn on the head, rim, and side of the bucket drums. Fourth graders also love the challenge of using pen percussion to play along with Ravel's Bolero. And Broadway is back at Patton. Fifth grade students are excited to announce that their fifth grade musical is back, and this year's fifth graders will be performing Beauty and the Beast. Mark your calendars for May 24th and May 25th for their show. And here are some of the boom whackers and their percussions and the bucket drumming and the dance of the Sugar Plum Fairy. And then, not finally, but in LMC, students heard different gingerbread stories. The kindergarten classes created even one of their own, and they went around the building finding the gingerbread men. Students researched different extreme weather situations and are now making their own brain pop movies. And finally, they're getting ready for their week of code, which is next week, always an exciting time in the LMC, December 13th through 17th. And students will be able to program on apps and websites and our robots, such as Dash, Bebots, or Spiros. The SEL program, there's a really cool bulletin board you can find over at Patton, is Part of the district SEL program, Ruler, each Patton class created a class charter, and part of the project was to create an agreed-upon list of how students would like to feel when they are in their classroom. This board displays a list of all the words used across the building. The bigger the word, the more it was used. This is meant to represent how students as a whole would like to feel when they are present at Patton. And last but not least, 42 fifth grade band members are hard at work preparing for their very first concert. They have a record number of 14 trombones this year. And here is a quick sneak peek at the band practice.
Trombones, euphoniums playing Mary Had a Little Lamb. 1, 2, ready, go.
Awesome. Thank you to Patton for supplying all the videos and all the material tonight. Thank you for the board for letting me shine the spotlight on Patton. Have a good night.
Thank you, Allison. I'm 1/14 of that trombone section. My son is playing all the time, knocking everything out. So thank you so much. It's wonderful to see that. Business and Finance, Stacy. This is the adoption of the 2021 tax levy. It's an action item. Should we start with the action, or? Yep. All right, let's get a motion. Anybody have a motion for the 2021 tax levy?
Mr. President.
Yes, Anisha.
I recommend that the Board of Education approve the resolution of Arlington Heights School District 25, Cook County, Illinois, providing for the levy of taxes for the year 2021.
Thanks, Anisha. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Greg. Any questions that haven't been asked or answered yet? All right. With that, let's take it to a vote. We'll start with Rich on this one.
Though I know we need this and I know the impacts, but where we are right now, I think there's better ways to look at our finances, so I'll vote no.
All right. Anisha, sorry, let's go this way.
Yeah, yes, right.
Oh, is Greg not good?
We're gonna.
Oh, okay. Yes.
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 All right, motion passes 5-1. Moving on to the extension of the memorandum of agreement with the Cook County Department of Public Health. This is also an action item.
Yeah, Mr. President.
Yes,
I
Anisha.
recommend that the Board of Education approve the memorandum of agreement with Cook County Department of Public Health for conducting and interpreting Binax Now COVID-19 antigen testing through standing order and or extended CLIA waiver.
Thank you, Anisha. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Rich. Any questions that haven't been answered yet?
I actually do have a question. Dr. Biden, do we, with the test to stay and kind of some of the difficulties, and I know that the staff at all the schools has done an amazing job trying to fix the lunch problems and some of the other situations that we've had. Is test to stay working, and do we have any metrics around how this is working to why we would continue it?
So this is a different thing than the Shield test.
Thank you.
This is the Binax Now test,
Sorry,
which
my
is a test
apologies.
only for symptomatic staff members.
Yep.
So that's okay. So should a staff member be symptomatic, they can be tested and get a 15-minute result, so they don't have to leave the classroom.
Got it. I read it wrong.
Any other questions? All right, hearing none, we'll start with Anisha.
Yes.
Yes.
Abstain.
Yes.
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 All right, it passes 5-0. One abstention.
5 and 1 abstention.
Yeah, I read it.
That's okay.
Moving on to the property tax refund recapture.
So this is an information item. We've talked a little bit about this, both Board Member Olenichek from the EdRed meetings and me last month as part of the tax levy, but there was legislation passed That is Public Act 1020519 that will allow for property tax recapture that will be automatically applied to taxpayers' tax bills effective with this 2021 levy that it gets paid in calendar year 2022. Part of that legislation requires that the Cook County Treasurer certify to us by November 15th, which they did on November 15th, certify that the amount of refunds for District 25 for the 2021 year is $940,584. We've been experiencing refunds over the last number of years, 6 or 7 years, that average between $900,000 and $1 million. So this refund recapture is automatically going to be applied unless a taxing body takes action to abate all or a portion of the refund recapture amount, and that needs to be done prior to April 1st of 2022. If this $940,000 would get added to tax bills, then it would be about $49 of additional taxes on a $400,000 home, which is our average home price in the district boundaries of Arlington Heights. I did leave a calculation at your places, a spreadsheet calculation, to just kind of walk you through how this works. So the top chart is what should happen if all properties within the district boundaries were valued at the right levels by the Cook County Assessor's Office, and there were no appeals or certificates of error. Then the taxes paid, as you can see in the chart, are shown. I just gave a sample of 3 properties, certainly not representative of our total tax bill, but just for an example purpose. So if the district were to collect in this scenario $34,390, split out based on EAV of the properties in the way that you see. What's actually happening is shown right below that, where property A is overvalued, so they're assessed at a higher value, they pay a higher tax the year of the tax bill, then they apply for a refund, and they get a refund after that extension has already been put out to the taxpayers, given to the district. So while they may pay that higher amount up front, we're going to issue a refund when they get their appeal settled. And then the taxes collected by the district overall go down by the amount of that refund. So then you can see that taxpayer pays the difference between what should happen and then what does actually happen. That taxpayer who got the appeal ends up paying the right amount, but the other taxpayers paid less than they would have paid had all the properties been valued at the right level in the first place. The impact of the new law then, I'm showing over to the right, where with that refund amount for that taxpayer, this new legislation allows us to recapture that refund amount. So with that being applied to the tax bill, you can see that while property A got a tax refund, they are now, with the way this legislation is written right now, they're going to actually pay the majority of that refund that they got back to us because of the way it's split out. They are trying to address that. There are some, they're back at the legislature trying to not have that happen. But in that case, everybody would pay to make up that refund so that the district would end up full in terms of what their extension should have been. But in that case then, with the impact of the new law, you can see now the taxpayer who got the refund actually overpaid their taxes, and the other 2 taxpayers still underpaid their taxes by not necessarily as much. So it's a lot of math. It's confusing. Unfortunately, it doesn't look like, when we were talking to Cook County Assessor Kagi on Friday, he did ask everyone, what would be your ideal date to get all this information in? And we said, well, October 1st, so you can get it out there, get that information to us. If all the assessments are done, and everything can get settled, we wouldn't be dealing with any of these issues if it was all handled up front, right, correct, the first way, which I think happens in other counties, but not to the extent that it happens in Cook County. So just to try to help kind of lay it out. So I just need at some point some direction from the board because it isn't automatic unless we take action as to whether you want to have me work with legal counsel to get some kind of abatement resolution to abate any or all of this refund recapture levy.
So is that clear? So we will automatically get the $900,000 that was from last year that was done in refunds, unless the board takes action to say, no, we don't want some or all of that money. So it's money that originally through the assessor we were given, but then we was taken back from us when people appealed their property taxes. So, and again, I think you said we have to do this by April? Right, so if the board wants to take some action to say, no, we don't want to collect all of that money that originally we were due, we would have to take action for that before April.
Mr. President?
Yeah, Gina.
Question. So when we talk about the levy and we talk about if we don't levy, there's like ongoing year after year impact. How does this affect any of that?
So this is completely separate than the regular tax levy, and it's 1 year at a time. So the $940,000 would simply appear on, in total across tax bills for the 2022 tax bills that are for the current year. The following year, we would get a new, the amount we refund between January 1, well actually November 16th of this year through November 15th of 2022, we would get that amount certified for the 2022 levy and have a similar, it gets automatic unless we take action. It's a year by year amount and will change every year depending on the refunds issued.
Any other questions?
So again, if we do nothing, then we will see that.
All right. Thank you, Stacy. That's clear as mud in some of them. Moving on to facilities management.
One question,
Yeah.
sorry. When will this become, I mean, I know it says April, but when do you need, like, because obviously if you need to work on this, what's the time frame to back into when we need a decision from us? Sorry.
So I just need to know if we're going to put it on a future agenda for action or discussion, then action. And, you know, obviously probably at least 10 days before the board meeting that we're going to put it on, so I can get the resolution from legal counsel.
All right.
Yeah, otherwise the boards, would say to Stacy, no, we don't need to put this on a future agenda. We're going to collect that money.
How do we feel about that?
You already forecasted into your budget that we don't get this money, right? Because you forecast that we lose a portion of refunds every year, right? Because we levy it out. So this would be a one-time potential hit, or a one-time bonus, I guess, into the budget. This first time year, what we do afterwards, so it's a one-time piece.
Mr. President?
Correct.
No.
I already project our 5-year forecast. The numbers that you'll see in a little bit, the graphs you'll see, include the projection that we continue to have that level of refunds, although I can't say that it's as high in the future as $1 million. I did assume that would go down as the Cook County Assessor's Office is getting better at doing the assessments with all the data he's made available and become computerized with a lot of it, making his life easier. So yes, it's already built in, or I'm not anticipating this money. I'm continuing to anticipate at this point refunds.
Greg, you? All right. All right. Anything else? All right. Can we move on?
Yes, I think hearing nothing,
Yeah.
the board is not asking us to put it on a future agenda at this point?
Not at this point.
Okay.
All right. Facilities management. This is an action item.
Yeah, Mr. President,
Yes, Anastasia.
I recommend that the Board of Education approve the 2022 Facilities Capital Improvement Projects as presented.
Thanks, Anisha. Do I have a second?
You waiting for a second?
Yes.
Second.
Thank you, Greg. Anisha and Greg, yeah, that was a cliffhanger there.
Good evening. Yes, we are presenting tonight scenario number 2 that was previously presented, recommending we hold off on Westgate Elementary School renovations just based on the current scenario with kindergarten conversation still going on. So moving up some other projects like the Greenbrier boilers, some additional roofing projects, south flooring, parking lots, security cameras, and telecenters. So again, trying to leverage scenario number 2 just because of the kindergarten conversation that's ongoing. We believe all these projects that were listed would not be impacted if kindergarten would go forward. So that's why we're bringing forward this list to stay up on our facilities until we have a final decision on if full day K is going to go forward and what may be needed for that. So again, recommending scenario 2 that was previously presented, and I'm open to any questions.
Mr. President?
Yes, Greg.
Thank you, Ryan, for explaining that. Again, we're just reviewing it, and my question is, you already clarified that these projects are not impacted by our full day kindergarten discussion. My question is the financial side. So this is a $4+ million, and yet we're going to hear later about a $32 million to fund a 5-year. Can you just, without going into full day kindergarten, how do they connect at all? Is it?
Well, yes, obviously there's some connection because it's our finances, it's our money. Again, we presented before that our capital spend should be about $6.5 million, so this is less than that. But again, this is an amount that we feel is needed to keep up with our facilities and is needed to keep up with improvements and making sure our facilities are still running. If there's something else, is there something else more detailed or something?
No. Let me rephrase. I'm sorry.
I think I'm clear. This $4.5 million is part of that $32.9 million.
Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah, okay, there you go, sorry.
All right, any other questions?
Mr. President?
Yes, Rich.
A couple questions. So you're asking for basically $4.5 million. Where would that money come from?
So as we've been doing for a number of years now, we have been funding capital projects out of general revenues. We've been levying higher in the O&M fund and then transferring the money to capital projects fund to pay for all the capital projects every year. For the last couple of years, as Ryan has been presenting the 5-year capital plan, we've mentioned that we're not going to continue to be able to do that infinitum. But because we had high reserve levels, it was a conscious decision on behalf of the board to spend those reserves down to some extent by doing this capital project work. Because these are one-time costs, not ongoing cumulative costs, we can control that spend and control the impact on the reserves. But as we continue to eat up reserves with capital projects, we're starting to get to that 60%, below that 60%. If we continue to do it with no other alternative, we would be below 40% within 5 years.
So, but maybe being very clear then, I know you're saying general revenues and all those types of things, but really this is being funded by our savings, our reserves, right?
Yeah, however you want it, reserves or just partial revenue,
so
partial
whatever
reserves.
money we're taking in at this point doesn't cover this $4.5 million. We're going to have to dip into our savings to do this work.
Correct. We have a balanced budget, but for capital projects.
Okay. So how much is in our O&M for basic repairs and things of that nature?
Roughly 2.6 million. Again, that covers utilities, repairs.
No, for repairs. I mean, because some of these things are, I mean, we're spending $5,000 on a curtain, but twice, maybe 15,000 on one, 5 on another.
Yeah, and again, this is a thing that the board has asked in the past, is having one-time cost items on there. Again, if we're not replacing that every year, so that's why it's on the list of $5,000.
No, no, and I can appreciate that, but why wouldn't that be in a repair item or something like that? Is this true repair cost, true capital cost of one time? I mean, to me, that's a maintenance cost, or, certain things of that nature are more, be maintenance.
Well, our capitalization threshold is $500. So we capitalize everything over $500. If it's a repair service, we would categorize that as a service expenditure, but we'd still put it in Fund 60 in the capital project plan. We would just call it a service, repair maintenance service, versus what I call a fixed asset. Anything over $500 is capitalized, a fixed asset, we asset tag it, et cetera.
Okay, so basically, we're right now with where we are right now at this 4.5, this includes our normal wear and tear, repair, and maintenance items. So, yes?
No, because a curtain, a stage curtain could last
20
years.
30 years.
It's not, we don't replace stage curtains every single year. We have 9 pairs of them.
No, I get it, but I thought I heard you saying is that even repair items are in this capital plan.
Well, like tuck pointing, that's not a fixed asset. Tuck pointing is a repair to an outside of a building, but I don't consider that a general annual expense.
Right.
That's a capital project.
So outside of utilities, paying for electricity, water, things of that nature, and the O&M, how much do we have in there versus this capital for repairs? Like, we got to repair a door. Is that coming out of this?
We have $1.2 million budgeted in the O&M fund, which is everything from custodial supplies, but it also would be repairs like our HVAC techs. We have maybe, I don't know, 50,000 or 60,000 for things they have to buy to do quicker fixes that they can handle in-house. We have a budget for our electrician, for electrical supplies. That stuff comes out of the O&M fund.
Okay. So this would be true then, non-quick fix?
Correct.
Lack of a better technical term.
Correct.
Okay. I did have one other question. I just slipped my mind right now, so if others have another question.
Mr. President? Yeah, Greg. Just to build on that conversation, would it also be fair to say, or another way to say that, the items on those lists are things you see coming that you're looking ahead, right, versus unplanned? Is that fair to say or no?
Yeah, again, there's some preventative maintenance funds in our O&M budget as well, but yeah, I would agree with that comment.
Yeah, thank you.
Mr. President? I did recall. So back in 2014-ish, maybe even before then, we were debt-free. We had finished off paying the debts for the air conditioning. And even then, we hadn't dipped into any type of debt or talked about how we fund capital. So how did we afford capital projects back then versus where we are now or through time? What has occurred?
So when we did the air conditioning project, we actually took $6 million out of reserves and then paid the rest by selling bonds. We did use some of the reserves for that. When I started in the district, our capital budget was $600,000 a year is what we were spending. We've increased it, and I would set the budget because it's what we could afford. I would tell Ryan, you get $2 million or $2.5 million, actually prior to Ryan. When Ryan came in and did his analysis, and I give it to his expertise, he's like, you can't continue to run your buildings on $2 million. That's why we had a life safety plan that came in and was valued at whatever it was valued at, or a 5-year life safety survey. So for the last couple of years, Ryan's presentation has showed we should be spending $5 to $6 million a year on our buildings to truly keep them up to par, and we have never been spending prior to, I would say, the last number of years, well, since we got that 10-year life safety survey, and we started realizing we had to keep up with this stuff or it was all going to hit us at once. So anything, in 2025, we'll be due to have another 10-year life safety survey. If we don't keep up with stuff, we're going to get hit on that survey saying now you've got 50 million of projects you got to do, or 39.2 million all at once. So it's not that these will never get done, it's just a question of do we keep up with them over time, or do we let things go and then suddenly get hit with a big bill? And so our recommendation is that we keep up with stuff.
It kind of makes sense. So in some ways, we're paying for maybe not investing as much into our buildings as we probably should have historically. Okay, so now we're playing catch up on that particular piece. I guess, looking at that high number and knowing that we have a strategic committee looking at this particular question, I'm somewhat hesitant of saying, hey, let's approve 4.5 without knowing, just by saying, hey, we're going to draw it from reserves right away, without hearing or thinking about, well, how are we going to actually fund that particular piece? Is there a way to look at what do you need us to really decide on today, meaning for timing to get bids and contracts and things of that nature, versus let's wait till we hear what some funding options are, because at this point, what I'm saying, what I'm hearing is if we approve it today, we're taking $4.5 million out of reserves, out of savings for this. And I'm not saying it's not needed, but if we have a committee that's looking at this, let's hear what the committee has to do to come back and say, here's what they recommend based on looking at it. And then really we only need to spend what you need today for your processes, and I'm making a number up, is $500,000, whatever number that is.
Mr. President?
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Thank you for these clarifying questions, Rich. This is some of the same things I was thinking about looking at the full day and struggling with how do we approve this now. And I defer to the experts, but I would, in hearing this discussion, just suggest, and would everyone here verify if this is true, could we, approve this now so that Ryan can do the work, but that we will make a decision on funding when it comes to full day. And that's why I asked about, is it part of that 32? Because we could say, to your point, we could say, well, 4.5 is coming out of reserves, and we're not going to go for bonds for a full 32, right? We might look at 28. Or we could go for bonds for, I'm just spitballing scenarios. My ultimate point being that we could approve this without locking ourselves into a certain decision. I do have a follow-up question for you, Ryan, and whether I ask it now or later, and also to your point, like maybe we didn't invest enough in the past somewhere. Maybe that's how we got there. What I'm curious about, is there a set point? Can we get to a set point when we're not chasing these kind of projects? Not that they're not going to come up, but that we come a lot closer to living within our means. Is that out there?
Yeah, I think so. I think we're getting closer now with some of these renovations we did in the last several years. We did try to bump some of the projects up, so I think we're getting close, but I don't think we're there yet. Again, we have enough buildings that need these repairs, right? I'm just being honest.
And I just want to maybe walk back a little bit on we didn't invest enough. I do think that's a piece of it, but there's also a piece to, if a roof has a useful life of 20 years and all the roofs were repaired within a 5-year window 20 years ago, well, that's why they're all hitting us again now 20 years later. So it also could be dependent upon when the investments were made for big ticket items in the past.
And I'll just expand on that. A lot of the additions and commons areas and things like that were done approximately in 1996, so we're really getting there at 25 years for a lot of these things that have just been there since 1996 or 1997. So there was a big investment in the mid-90s for those kind of things, and we're starting to see that those are some of the items that are needing repair and replacement now.
Mr. President, I'll just follow with a comment. We don't have to relive the past, but if we can learn from what decisions that were made, if we can set up our future board in 20 years from now, right? Like, so we make decisions now, but we set them up for success. I mean, that's what my interest is in asking that question. Is there that set point, or what do we have to look forward to in 20 years? Maybe we can't make those decisions, but having that awareness as we have a big discussion coming up, I think is important.
I think that's one of the prime reasons to wait for that the advisory committee to come back, because they're looking at, hopefully they're looking at the long term, right, and how we fund this. But I guess getting back to maybe the question I had is, what is that absolute, what do you need today? Is it truly, just again, looking at it, you probably don't need the approval for a curtain today, but you may need it on the boiler room, and I don't know.
Yeah, again, I'm not going to put myself on the spot and try to pick and choose which ones are needed today.
Say, Ryan, I would jump in and say that, Ryan's done a lot of detailed work, and this is what he needs today, really, right? That he's been doing a ton of work on this. As you know, in January, you'll see a new 5-year plan for capital outlays. So this has been in the 5-year plan for capital outlays. And this is what, as we looked at the 2 scenarios, one I believe was a $9 million, and this was a $4 million. And so that's where we selected that. Let's do these must-dos now. Like Greg said, we're asking for you to approve these projects now because Ryan needs to start going out for bid to be able to actually get things done in time. Everything comes back to you for approval. And in January, when we do the 5-year capital outlay projections for the board, we'll be having that conversation of, do we want to continue to take this from our budget, or is it time to sell bonds to pay for whether it's some items on this list now or the next future years of items?
Mr. President, so Stacy, is the strategic planning committee helping with the recommendation on how to, I don't want to call it better forecast, but how to get our budget to be better supporting of what the capital investment and outlay of Ryan's 5-year plan has to be?
Yeah, they're there.
Okay, so they're working on that piece of it to help give you ideas and ways to do this. When we did the bond sale last time, what did we do, how much was it for, and how long did it take us to realize and buy the bonds back or pay the bonds off? Like what is the?
So we did 4 bond issues.
Okay.
2015, 2016, 2017, 2018. A couple of them were done in less than $10 million increments to take advantage of tax-exempt savings, and then there was one large one that was over that amount. We are still paying off. We have 2 outstanding bond issues. 2 of them are paid off, and we'll have those paid off 2031, I believe. We did not use all of our debt service capacity at the time. Matter of fact, we used roughly half of it. To try to make equal payments. That's why we went out to 2031 and not have taxes increase double what they did. So we do have capacity there to fund these projects. Sorry, I'm trying to recall the rest of your question.
I was just going to say, and those 4 bond issues were a combination of the additions that we did on our schools, capital outlay projects that we determined and the board approved, and life safety audit that the state said we had to do. I believe that was a $10 million.
10 million of it was for the life safety.
So when we get, so what Stacy talked about, when we get another life safety report, those are items that we are mandated to do. So we rolled those 3 things in together, covering some of life safety, some of the capital outlay, and our additions that we did to our schools.
And I believe the total bond issue was right around $50 million.
Yes.
Okay. A total of all 4.
And that was still only 50% of our capacity? Okay, so there's multiple things kind of to Rich's point, right? You have the plan. Clearly we're underfunded in the capital spending, and that's kind of demonstrated itself in Ryan's 5-year plan over and over again, and we're trying to fund this, and we're trying to keep a balanced budget. At what point will we see the kind of the plan of where these 2 roads come together?
I believe I'm presenting at the January meeting for my task force or action team. Well, so I'm sorry. So Ryan presented a 5-year plan at the last meeting. Yes. I'll present the 5-year financial forecast in January, as well as in the action team committee report.
Anything else?
So did a motion, right?
We have
And
a motion.
second, so I think.
Take a vote on that. Starting with me, I'll say yes.
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 Can't see pulling out of savings without knowing where the money's coming. No.
Yes.
All right, the motion passes 5-1. Moving on to the superintendent, freedom of information.
Again, this is just an item we added at the last meeting, and you'll see this every month. These are any FOIA requests that were presented since the last meeting and the response date that was provided.
All right. Any questions that haven't been answered yet? Yes. All right, moving on to strategic plan, student achievement goal update.
I believe Dr. Fitzpatrick's going to do this one.
Good evening. So our student achievement goal action team includes 20 staff and District 25 community members. We met twice as a individualized team. There were structured activities that were provided to the group to guide member engagement and positive dialogue. And through focused discussion, the group brainstormed and decided on 4 objectives aligned with the student achievement goal. Those 4 being increase inclusive practices, develop an assessment plan that encompasses qualitative and quantitative data and information, increase teacher competencies to meet the needs of all learners, implement consistent intervention and support across all district schools. And after finalizing our list of objectives and prioritizing them, we concluded with a discussion focused on the opportunities for determining and measuring our success for each objective. Then on Thursday, November 30th, all strategic plan action teams met together to share objectives and discuss overlaps and gaps and conflicts. All of the objectives will now be shared with staff who will begin working toward the objectives and overall goals of the strategic plan.
All right. I know several board members were a part of that 30th meeting. Any questions?
Lori, quick question, probably more toward Lori than you, Peg. So when would we expect to have all these strategic, or the strategic SMART goals of what we're going to do? When would we expect to see that as one packet? Because I'm just thinking timeline now. We're about coming up to about a year into the strategic goals. So, and you still have to implement whatever's coming up with. So I'm just trying to think long term. When should we expect something that we could understand?
Thank you. I think I provided some information to the board ahead of time about that in terms of our process. So the step that we added this year was action team, goal action teams, where we invited more community to be a part of the process. So the last time we did a strategic plan, we didn't have that step, but there had been a strong interest in more voices. So we took a few extra months to do that piece so that everybody who expressed an interest could be a part of that. Now is when we get to the kind of the work of the day piece, where now the cabinet level team will take all that information. We will create a timeline of each goal and the strategies in that goal and when we expect to be able to accomplish those and how. And we'll bring that back to the board sometime in the early winter months.
Sorry, just to make sure I heard. So you'll bring all of them back sometime January, February-ish?
Yes.
Somewhere in there, okay, thanks.
All right, anything else? All right, thank you for the update. Moving on to full day kindergarten update.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. President?
Greg.
I apologize jumping in. I know it's unusual before a presentation. I just wonder if we could be intentional right in this moment and decide, looking at the time, do we want to hear the presentation now? How much discussion, if any? Do we want to meet at a later date to have a fuller discussion? I wonder if we could be intentional right in this moment.
Yeah, that's a good point, because I know two items down is the board meeting times in concern of the, so what I think you're saying is that we maybe see the presentation now and then decide on a later date to maybe have a committee of the whole meeting to have a discussion on this where we could focus and give it its due diligence or its due, having the conversation rather than trying to cut it short. Or is anybody?
And if you want, we could save the presentation for a committee of the whole meeting, do it all together.
I was going to say, to me, it would be better if we, I mean, I know people came here, but it would be better if we had a full meeting dedicated 100% to the presentation, conversations. The reality is this is going to be a 2-hour conversation. And I know last time you guys were here until 1 o'clock in the morning, and honestly, it's not ideal to get that. So.
I think we're all really committed, but I think it's respectful for our community, and it allows us a little more time to dig in. But I saw some nods to, waiting on the presentation, but open to either.
There's also a couple ways that you can do this, and Stephanie, if you would jump in here if I misspeak. So we could move on to the items after this on the agenda and then make a statement that we want to continue this meeting and pick a day and time on when that would be and then come back to that item. Or we have whatever we have in this meeting, close this meeting and schedule a special committee of the whole. The difference there is in this second version, we would need to re-announce with 48 hours notice, as opposed to if you said, we're going to continue this meeting and it's going to be on Monday at 7 p.m., then it's all ready to go. So either way is fine. I just wanted you to, if we want to do, let's say we're going to really just put kindergarten on its own meeting, schedule a whole special committee of the whole, then we need to make sure that when we decide that date that we give 48 hours to the public to know.
Mr.
I
President.
Sorry.
Sorry. Go ahead, Anisha.
No, go ahead, you started.
Okay. Point of clarification. This does not, on the agenda, have an action associated with it at this time.
Correct.
So is it possible to have the presentation and still follow up with a meeting of the whole to actually then absorb and then conduct the discussion if we follow the rules around the notification, everything on the meeting?
Absolutely. The only thing I worry about there is, is it going to be so far away from when you had the presentation that we'll have to do, the.
Okay, fair enough. Fair.
I just want to kind of add to that perspective, Mr. President, is that, when we send an agenda out to the community, the community is waiting for some kind of, to hear about it as well. And I know this topic, like all the topics, we have a very invested community, which is excellent. Want to know a little bit more about it. So, and not to set precedents that we have something on the agenda and kind of scale back on it. It may cause some anxiety. So I'm kind of with Gina as far as it's on the agenda. I know that we'll always have the presentation, and almost because it's here, it's causing a lot of community conversations as well, that we have this discussion, and then when we have a committee of the whole, we will have the presentation. We, always study before our meeting, so we just go forward with this agenda item.
Though I appreciate, sorry, Mr. President. Though I appreciate, Anisha, you're absolutely right on that, but I do think, maybe just deferring the whole meeting to one full meeting, we can devote enough time on this, because, right now it's 9:30, and, I'm here, I'm ready to stay till 1 o'clock in the morning, but my mind may not be there ready. And I'd rather have the time to absorb, ask the questions ahead of time, look at this so that we're prepared for a more full discussion with more audience members as well, need be. So I'd vote for just postponing it to a separate committee of the whole, similar to what we did September 2nd or something like that. I think that might be appropriate.
So I'm hearing 2 members that want to see the presentation today. Does anybody else want Rich's idea?
I only would ask, what is the time frame, right? That would be the biggest thing, because if we say, let's delay this, what is the time frame? Because we can't delay it for more than, a certain perspective. Because I get it, we want to, there's more to talk about, we want to do that full day, but we've got to do it within a reasonable
Do we look to next week, Thursday?
That's what I'm saying. And
Yeah.
within the next week, like, we have to say that's our commitment as a group. If we're gonna, I'm okay from a perspective of saying, hey, we want to do this as right. Because I don't think we're gonna be able to walk out of even after the committee of the whole meeting to technically have a vote to say, let's move forward.
Right.
Because I think
There'll
at
be
the end of the day,
options.
right,
Yeah.
there's gonna be a lot of options. There's gonna be a lot of conversation. But I also want to make a commitment to the community that we will be doing this within a time frame that says, hey, we respect the need to talk about it, but we also need to respect the fact that we need to do it next week, whatever time frame we pick, and then we dedicate that whole meeting to it so that we can have a full conversation.
Mr. President, I agree with that sentiment. Chad sharing, absolutely.
So Thursday, Wednesday, Thursday?
Thursday would work better for me.
Sorry, Thursday what?
Thursday would work better for me.
So Thursday the 16th? Okay, Gina's not available that day.
It's okay if everybody else is, but my apologies, I'm not available.
Otherwise, just to throw it out there, do you want to do Thursday, January 6th, our first week back?
If there's, Mr. President, if there's a way we could look at next week, even if it's a different day,
Okay.
and if it's not doable, I guess we'll go there, but next week would be my preference.
Mhm.
My apologies, I'm traveling.
No, it's a rough time of year to be scheduling all this stuff.
So if everybody else is available the 16th, at least there's 5 of you. Gina wouldn't be there. We don't know Brian's schedule.
I'm available on the 16th.
Is that?
All right, 16th it is?
Yeah.
Well, I'm just looking at my calendar here. That's all I'm looking at.
I'm
So-
not turning off my phone if you don't.
All right. So, Chad, do you want to let me know in the morning?
In the morning and let you know, but I'll make if it's at night, I'm fine.
Okay.
Usually, during the day,
Do we
it's fine.
want to set a time, 7 o'clock earlier, 7?
6:30?
Yeah, 6:30.
Try to do
Mhm.
like a 6:30?
Yes.
'Cause I think-
Earlier the better.
I think reality,
It's going to be a long discussion, yeah.
It's a 23, pages.
So 6 o'clock on the 16th, tentatively, I'll check in with Brian and Chad in the morning.
And if I can cut my trip short, I will.
Thank you.
I just think like we put this on the agenda, and I know that people who have come to watch and are going to watch, but I think it's better to do it sooner.
Okay.
Mr. President? Yeah, I just want to acknowledge Anisha and Tina's concerns around that again, and I think we all do our best. We make an agenda, but this is the time when we get to talk together. And now looking at that agenda, we can really do the public's work better, I think, by making this decision.
Yeah, I also just want to add to that. I respect my colleagues' decision on this, and also just want to reiterate, and maybe clarification from you, Dr. Bide, is that this is the slides that went out and what's been presented to the community is none of these are recommendations. These are all research points that you're gathering information to do due diligence to this decision, and nothing is set in stone, and nothing is like, okay, this way or that way. None of those options could be something we go forward with.
Correct. We were just giving, the board had asked for the whole range, to really look at this from a whole range of cost neutral to what would be a cost to do it to the greatest extent possible. So we're giving you that whole range for that discussion. As you represent the community, I think it is smart for you to say that we got to look through every view and every financial aspect before we hone in on which direction we want to go. None of these are recommendations. They're all just some research to consider and help us kind of fine tune what direction the board would like us to go.
And so I just finish up, Rich. And so I know we're deferring this conversation, but I really want the community to understand that this is a discussion, and that we've all taken an oath to be fiscally responsible, and no decisions will be made. So to rest easy, don't be anxious. We're going to have this. We're going to do due diligence to this decision, make the best decision for our community.
Maybe just to add one last thing, but you're on the bright side of doing this in this way. Yeah, I'm not sure when this, at least by Tuesday it was made public. This gives the public more chance to, review the data themselves and to provide any feedback to us and to the board through that process. So.
Mr. President?
Yes, Jane.
So, Dr. Bine, if you could just, so that everybody kind of level sets expectations, when we started the discussion and we started down the path of all of this exploration, we had kind of set an expectation of if we were to implement, it didn't look like, it clearly wasn't going to be for this school year. And if I recall, it didn't look like it was for next school year either. It was for the following one, correct?
At this point, the timeline we would propose would be to have full-day kindergarten open for the 23-24 school year.
Which is consistent with what you offered when we started on the journey.
Yes.
Okay, and
now there are some pieces, right? So if, for example, we need to look at some financing options, there's going to be some timelines that if we miss, push us back. But at this point, we feel that we still, if we, moving this meeting, that we still could be on target to do, looking at all the possible options the board could consider, and whatever option we move forward with. At this point, we feel pretty good that we'd be opening with full-day kindergarten in the 23-24 school year.
so I would ask that we make sure that we articulate any risk to that associated timeline with backing into when a final action item would need to be taken so that we're ready for that discussion.
And this discussion, just to kind of maybe put a box around it for the board, what we need as administrators at the end of this discussion is, are you ready for us to move the next step? And because to get the next level of detail and to take the next steps is when we need to start spending some money on architect fees, on bond consultants, on attorney fees. At this point, we haven't spent any significant money to get down to the details. So after this discussion, what we'll be really looking for from the board is, are you giving us the head nod to move the next step to really get the exact details for you of a variety of options? Because to do that, we'll need to spend some money.
And point of clarification on that, after the meeting of the committee of the whole, that would have to occur in a board meeting as an action item.
At the committee of the whole, the board can say, yeah, we're ready, we're okay with you moving ahead based on this general information.
Okay.
So we could do that. We wouldn't be we would still come back to the board with, here's the actual detail we have from the experts or the specialists and the exact timeline and that kind of thing for you still to make some decisions about.
Okay. Thank you for the clarification.
All right. Anything further? So next Thursday.
Okay.
Next Thursday. I know we were talking about time constraints, and unfortunately, work is calling, so I'm going to respectfully ask to be excused again this month, and I know this is the second month in a row. My schedule's changing for next year, so this is the last time, hopefully, that this goes on. So I think we pass on to the secretary as the role of president, and I appreciate it. Thank you. Misha, thank you.
Okay, we're going to be moving on to the next item on the agenda, which is a letter from the board, and it's a discussion item.
So just as a reminder, board had brought this up a few months ago of wanting to have an opportunity to talk with each other about whether the board is interested in writing a letter to describe the challenges our district has gone through during the pandemic, including a response to the related executive orders. So this is on the agenda for the board to begin that discussion. Is that something that you want to do as a board, et cetera?
I think this is, the intent of the letter, I think, has changed over, or maybe is not. I think in my mind, it hasn't changed since we first started talking about it. And specifically, the letter is not about mandates or anything. It's about local control, in saying that as a local governing body, we should have the power to decide what is right for this particular area. So I kind of look at it in the one way, whether or not you agree with mask or unmasked or whatever those types of things is, we have the ability to tax our taxpayers to the tune of, Stacy, how much could we potentially do? How many? $66 million. So we could almost, I mean, literally tax our budget, our annual budget, almost, right, 2/3 of our annual budget, and just do it, right? We have that authority to do. Yet there are many things that we're being limited to by not looking at what's in our particular area. And this is not a particular point that is unique to our district. Many districts are doing it. In fact, there was a letter that was sent to the ISBE and the IPDH on November 18th or the 20th, with many superintendents from the middle to southern districts basically saying the same thing, saying give local control back to the districts, because there is no benchmark, there are no pieces. The local districts can really best attune for what's good within their community on a variety of topics. So give the power back to the districts. In my mind, that's what really we should be writing about, is local control versus something else. So I'll open it up to
Madam President, or Madam Acting President. So I want to kind of change this conversation ever so slightly. The local control is the right answer, but more importantly, when will we, I'll call it the country, the legislation, what is the end game? What is the end game? Is it full eradication? Because by that point, we'll all be sitting on clouds with wings, hopefully. The reality of it is that what is the end goal? Are we going to manage COVID till full eradication, similar to polio, or is this going to end up being managed like the flu? That information is a huge gap in the way that our legislation has provided, and all of our medical guidance or opinions have offered. Nobody is really giving us where are we headed with this? What is it going to take? What is it going to take? Is it hospitalizations? What metric? It's the same thing that I think everybody is having the same questions, but I want to shift it. It's not necessarily as much about local control as it is about what are the metrics for us as a state, right? Look at our surrounding states. Everybody's doing something different. What is that end game? And if we're going to head down a path, I would offer that I would like to see that request, demand, et cetera, be made as part of any communication that we're putting out to the legislative body of the state of Illinois.
So then in that vein, do you spin that letter to also say that because of the lack of it, that's even more the purpose to have local control, where we could do that based on the needs of the community?
We could absolutely look at it from that perspective, but I would love somebody to articulate what is that
Yeah, I mean, I know I'm the one who brings this up, so I'll be the one to get blamed, but that's fine. I agree with both what you're saying. For me, from the perspective is there has got to become a point where this end game, is this going in, are we out, when does the pandemic, quote unquote, end, and we go into an epidemic potential situation? And for me, it's about the local control and making sure that we understand, but like I said, we just passed a levy to pass taxes on people, but I can't figure out how we can, to your point, Rich, put somebody and say we have the control to say, hey, we know that COVID is this or whatever, but what is the next opportunity for us to look at? So I really want to, and listen, I know we've got the letters, I've got emails that says, hey, you should be doing it individually. I'll admit it, I've done it individually. I'm asking those questions, right? But as a board, we also oversee the school district. We have to give some of that control back so that, to the board, to administration to be able to do this. And so I think it's an important part. We are a governing body. Yes, we are volunteers, so to speak. It's the best paying job we all have. But the reality of it is we do have impact on the decisions we make. And I really think, we should be asking the questions, what is the end game? When does this come to an end? Because if we don't, right, this is an executive order. My argument is really from the perspective, like to your point, the legislation, someone has to come in here and say, hey, right? We have to start acting as a governing body. We have to start doing things instead of just waiting, in my perspective. And we're asking the question. We're not going against the mandate. We're not asking to go. I wasn't asking for that. It's really is, where is this coming to an end at some point in time? Or are we just going to continue to extend, and we're just in a never-ending battle of, and it just continues to create more divide. It continues to create, frustration. I mean, I hear good things about, the people having to quarantine. I hear people bad things, but all of these things are challenges that we are facing, because at the end of the day, there's nothing that we can do to make changes for our perspective to say this is what it should work, this is how it should not work, based on the needs of our community. It's based on like this is what we're doing, and because of this is how it's functioning. So.
No, I'm
Oh, there we go, I'm back. If I could. So, Chad, you suggested this quite a while ago, and to sit at this table is to be presented with the challenge of understanding your colleagues, right? And I want you to know, in particular, that I've done a lot of thinking on this, and so I understand how a board member could sit here and have a desire to take the action you're suggesting. I think that's the same desire that would lead someone to even want to sit at this table. Absolutely. And I understand any frustration that's being expressed here. What's the end game? How do we get out of this situation? And we're all frustrated with the pandemic. We can all extend empathy to that sentiment, because it's been a challenge. I saw it before I sat on the board, and I see it now, to address a community and really work toward unifying the community. So, though it may come up later, what I want to start with is whether or not the action that is suggested is worthwhile. The underlying thoughts, those are a different discussion. So what I would say, after reflecting, is that the action of a letter is disconnected from the main point of our service. And I'll go back to the document that we all adhere to, our governance framework. It's under the board job description. It's in letter A. The board will focus first on its primary work, which is to clarify district purpose, direction, and goals. Well, let me put it in plainer language. If you're thinking about this action, will it save us money, improve our programs, raise test scores, bring full-day kindergarten to life? I think we know the answer. And you could look at the agenda we had today. Where would it impact the agenda we discussed today? It wouldn't. This letter, and not the intent behind it, right, but the action of the letter from a full board, not individuals, is political, it's performative, because it's not going to move the needle, and it's divisive. We're already going to have a discussion here that's going to highlight that, or we could. So we should not take an action that's where we're going to lean into those divisions, because there might be agreement for some here and disagreement, and the same thing is reflected in our community. So there is no benefit. But here's the thing. Here's the rub. After a while, I thought, oh, that's where we stop, right? And then I remembered a letter that came through our email on July 8th from our own association. And here it is. From Tom Bertrand, our executive director, and I'll just give you a little excerpt that came. He had a dialogue with the state superintendent and then sent a letter to Governor J.B. Pritzker urging guidance that allows locally elected school officials to determine what mitigation measures should be implemented to keep their district safe and create productive, healthy learning environment for the students. The letter, let me just give you a couple excerpts here. sent to the governor says, as the state emerges from the pandemic, it is important that decision-making regarding COVID-19 mitigation measures for public schools be returned to locally elected boards of education. It goes on later to say, school boards feel stymied by the lack of consistent guidance and the autonomy to make decisions for their school community. Now this letter, and we all got it, it was sent on behalf of 848 member school districts to the governor. So what I would say to you is, I think the suggested action, we would be acting on an inflated sense of importance to say that a letter from one school district in the north suburbs would move the needle on the issue. This letter went out from the association, didn't get my approval, okay? So maybe I agree, maybe I don't. Maybe you agree, maybe you don't, right? And they're not the only ones. There was supposed to be a webinar, EdRed webinar last night, got delayed to January 11th, to my great regret, because I was going to share some of that. And it's going to be with EdRed and, can I just say it, a Democratic representative, okay? If we want to say whether it's political or not, I don't know what's going to come out of that, but you know, I see head nods, it's about state mandates. So listen, I'm not here to, I mean, we can, I've got notes, but why would, do you want to go ahead? And I'm sorry, I'm not asking you, Chad, I'm just asking the royal you. Do we really want to go head to head on this? To what end? Everyone here has heard your views, they've now heard mine. Okay, so we've said our piece, and if we don't set a letter, it's not saying you agree or disagree with the governor. It's not saying you approve or disapprove of mandates. It doesn't do any of that, right? It just simply means that we are ready to put our focus where it belongs and clarify the district's purpose, direction, and goals. And that's what I think we should spend our time on. We're going to have a whole meeting on that next week. So let's do that, right? I can talk about local control. I got notes, okay? And I'm sitting here because I believe in it, but I'd like to stop the conversation there and acknowledge that maybe everyone doesn't agree with me or I don't agree with you. Great. Let's move on.
Thank you for all the comments that came so far. I'll add to the comments as far as I acknowledge the comments that came through, and Chad, I know you brought this up, and I acknowledge your sentiments with the intention and so forth. And however, with our school board, I believe we need to kind of stick to our responsibility and our governance objectives here as outlaid by the framework, and I agree with my colleague Greg, and that ISB do its advocacy role on a statewide level, and we also have EdRed who does, their part of their work, so I stand there. Are there any other comments or discussions on this topic?
Yeah, no, Greg, thank you, Greg and Anisha. I do appreciate that. I honestly have to disagree with both of y'all because, if you look at a governing body, the whole governing body's purpose is to provide, direction back or to give feedback back, to act as one. And you have to look at that particular. Not everyone in a governing body agrees with every step. Some agree, some disagree. But IASB, great. It's an association of everyone. I actually think having a letter come from a local district is actually more impactful than the IASB. Because to your point, you don't know if you agreed with it or didn't agree with it. That's one person or the association's agreement on it. And if we don't stand up for local control, we won't have control. There won't be anything for us to be looking at. So you speak to the wanting to do the good things. This is doing the good things because it gives us the power. It continues that type of power that says we in the community should be looking out for what's best in the community. This is how things slowly get nickeled and dimed away, where at some point we are not here sitting talking about curriculum or how to make our students better. We won't be here at all because there'll be someone in Springfield making that decision for the entire state that says, here's the curriculum you'll be following, and this is how you'll do it, and this is how much you'll spend on every particular piece. So I kind of disagree with that particular thought. And I guess at this point, we need to, you know, if at some point today, we need to provide some guidance back to Lori to say, draft something or move away from this particular piece. You know, that's at least my thought. I don't know.
And I would respectfully request that if there's something the board wants to do, that a board member draft it. If that is something, if the board wants to pursue that a board member draft it. Again, it would have to come back to an open meeting for discussion and action or a vote on the board on whether they want to submit the letter or not.
You know, I also kind of want to push back a little bit. Thank you for that clarification, Dr. Bine. I also want to kind of push back as far as the one agency I didn't mention is the Illinois State Board of Education. And as far as local control goes, you know, we govern under the framework that we took an oath on, right? And so, but there's many regulations that come to every school district from the Illinois State Board of Education, and that are not made here at the local front. And so we are part of that as Illinois State Board of Education as well.
Madam Secretary, are we ready to move to the next agenda item?
Yeah, if there's no further discussion, let's move to the next.
I'm fine, like from that perspective. I mean, I understand. I think the question is right. Do we want to, I mean, I understand. I don't want to put this on Dr. Biden. That's not her area of expert. That's not what she was hired to do, right? This is the board, that's why I wanted to have the conversation. And I think it's also, without having, I know we have the, you know, we have to do this in open meeting. There's no way other to do this, right? That's the reality of it. We don't have Scott, we don't have Ryan. I know the public is divided, to your point, and I understand the action and all that. But I still feel like, you know, I wanted to have this conversation because at the end of the day, I feel like it's important that we, you know, people are thinking that we're just sitting here and we're just taking it. Let's just be reality, right? And I'm very, I think we have to Bridget's point, bring back that, like, a letter, you know, the intent of the letter is not to be blasphemy, or it's just really like, hey, we have to, like, to your point with the ISBE when they sent that, we have to bring this back. At what point will we get these metrics, and what point, because here's the thing, we have to start preparing that this started in 2020, we're going into 2022, are we gonna go into 2023, 24? I mean, I really think there has to be an end game decision, and I think when board members and boards start to get together to say, hey, what is the end game here? Where are we going? We're not saying, hey, we're not taking them ask, we want to do this. We're not doing that. What we're saying is we want some clarification from our elected officials to say, what are you guys planning to do as we start to come out of this? Where is that guidance? What are we doing and when? Because to continue down this path of just sitting here and waiting, you know, as Rich said, I still think we are going to it just continues to erode at what we have today. And I understand, right, we don't want, there's no other way we can have this conversation because of being elected officials, because of open meetings. I can't do this, and I can't say, come over to my house and let's do this, right? Because the reality of it is that violates every rules of the Open Meetings Act, right? So that's why I wanted to have the conversation. I know, you know, Scott and Brian are not here, so I think instead of wasting more time with the board from your perspective in an open meeting, maybe I will individually reach out to Scott myself, and I can individually reach out to Brian, because that's allowed by, right? If they tell me I'm not interested, right? I've heard opinions, and if they tell me they're not interested, it's done. If they tell me they are interested, then I will be bringing it back, but I'm going to ask, because I think that's the only fair thing with them not being here, and we just have that conversation.
Madam Secretary, respectfully, Chad, you're absolutely right. You can take those actions, but I would not say that's an equitable solution at all, because I haven't had that conversation. So now do I need to call them to present my view, to convince them? Do you see what I'm saying? Like, I mean, so Maybe that's a discussion you and I need to have separately, but.
So, again, like I said, when I say I don't mean like it's just gonna be me. If you would like to have a conversation with them too and give your opinion, I'm fine with that. I just think it's important, right?
Yeah.
We've been sitting here, I've been sitting here for this entire time, the entire last year and a half, and it's like, I will still go back. When we had local control, we were doing this when there was no vaccine. We asked the teachers to come in every day. We asked this to be done. We've asked a lot of these people, okay? And now there's a vaccine. Now there's all this other opportunity. And I'm not turning this into like that, but the reality of it is, we asked people to do things when there wasn't all these mitigations. And now there's these mitigations, and we're still playing, a game with people and stuff like that, okay? I'll admit, I work in an industry where I ask people every day to show up to work and service the patients, okay? We did this before, we did this after. We're not changing the way we're doing things, okay? And I understand that, but I feel like in this situation as a board member, we just need to be clear that we have to have these conversations, and I get it. I know people that I don't want to waste everybody's for another 2 hours talking about this, so I'm willing to have a conversation on sidebar, Greg. We could just take it from there. And if we want to meet individually with the 2 other individuals, you can meet with them, I'll meet with them. I'm good with that. And we can end it there. I just wanted to have the conversation, that's all.
And again, I'll just remind the board that this can also be added again, right? If the board, needs to have some more discussion, it can be added again to another meeting.
No further questions or discussions on this, apart from what Chad mentioned as his next steps. We'll move on to the next item. Okay.
It is an action item.
It is an action item, board meeting times, which is perfect segue as we were talking about time. And I need a motion for this action item, board meeting times.
Madam Secretary?
Yes.
I move that the Board of Education change the start time of all remaining 2021-2022 scheduled board meetings to 7 p.m.
Thank you. Second that?
Second.
Okay, thank you, Rich.
And I'll just mention for the board, so that would mean that we would back up our closed session start times typically to 6:15, although those do vary depending on the items that we have for there. But this should, again, help us have some more time to have discussions, but not go to the 1 o'clock hour like we did last.
Madam Secretary?
Yes, Rich.
Thank you, Lori, for that. I was wondering if maybe not, because this brought up the thought process and probably can't be done today, but maybe brought up again at a different board meeting, is the dates of the board meetings. Today is the District 214 board meeting, and so I started looking at what's coming up in January, February, March, and so we have 8 meetings left, 5 of which coincide with District 214. And I was wondering if we could make that switch so that we could attend 214. There are some of us that have an interest in 214 because our kids go there as well, so sorry, to attend those board meetings.
Of course, the board can have that conversation. I'll just add, right, that we do that every year. We decide in April what the meetings are going to be from July through the following June. And that sets the board's schedules, the administrator's schedules. We do a lot of scheduling of school events around those. So there are many people who are involved who plan for the year. So changing the dates could be a little more difficult. Again, we can add it onto a future agenda. At that time, I would be recommending that we wait, and when we set the next year's dates, coming up in April, we will determine the dates for July through June, that would be a time to make sure that everyone involved in meetings would have those days for the full year. But we can definitely add it on to an upcoming agenda in January for the board to discuss if they want to do that prior to that.
If you could come with some options as to what are the conflicts. So just as you mentioned, if we're able to move 3 because there are no school conflicts, that might be a reasonable means. But if we're able to do something, that would be great.
And to your point, I guess, just 214, when do they publish their schedule?
Same thing, the year.
Same, yeah, but the same time frame that we do?
Yeah.
So do we coordinate with them just so maybe better, I think to Richard's point, it'd be ideal because there are parents who have both, and I know that some parents have said they've had to run between either ones. Could we create it so that we're either one night and they're another night, or however it works out? So I think in April, that would be a good conversation to have.
Okay.
Did we take a vote on this one yet, the times?
Because of.
I think so. I used to read.
Okay, so we'll.
So there was a motion and a second
Yep.
to change the start times
And
of
so
the
let's-
remaining school year board meetings to 7 PM, and then you just need
And
a
I
vote.
believe I'm the start.
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead. Thank you, Jeanette. Starting vote. Yes?
Yes.
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 Yes. So that's 5-0.
5-0.
We're dwindling down today. Okay, we'll move on to the next segment of our agenda, which is community input, where public may address the Board of Education. And we have one public comment here from Christy Witherill. Thank you, Christy.
We have a table now? Working? Just listening to the conversation, I understand that all of your names will be on this letter from the board. But perhaps it isn't necessarily about you, is it? It's about the community. It's about what we want. And again, I think I was up here last time requesting that there be more input from the community. This time last year, we had a lot of surveys and whatnot. Why don't you put out a really foolproof survey that simply says something like, do you want your board to have local control? And if you have a majority that want local control, then you guys don't really get to choose and have a debate about it at another meeting. You just send the letter and we move on. So please take that into consideration.
Thank you, Chrissy. We'll seeing no further comments. I think we have one more. Thank you, Lena.
Short. You are all professionals. You know what an agenda is, and you know people show up to discuss those items. I have come to more meetings than I can count. I take time away from my family, work, and my life because I believe in the future of our children. I voted, I showed up for you all to just spend 40 minutes talking about your schedules and not talking about something that is on the actual agenda. Full day kindergarten is never going to happen if you don't talk about it and get the job done. This is embarrassing. You can't just make up rules 2 hours into a meeting of what you're going to talk about. And Greg, you spent 20 minutes on your conversation about not wasting time, but you just did. I'm beyond disappointed. Guess what? I can't come next Thursday. It's my daughter's birthday. No one asked me my schedule. Maybe you should manage your time better. Look at the items on the list and then decide before the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Brittany. We're moving on to the next agenda item, seeing no other comments, right, Lena? To future agenda items, and if there's any topics.
There's
Yeah.
not any topics in waiting, so I think we can go to new topics. Item B, if the board has new topics.
Rich?
Yeah, I think one of the ones that I'd like to have maybe more of an update on is the remote academy and how that's progressing. What have been some learnings? I know there's been many comments about what's the difference between a learning plan and homework. So if during that session we could have a better understanding of what's the difference between those pieces, I think that might be beneficial. And then knowing how are we measuring the results. Maybe have a survey to the parents that have kids in that student, in the remote academy by age, so that we understand where, where the second graders, what their feedback is versus the third grade or fourth grade parents, just to better understand, because I think we're doing the multi-year type of remote academy.
Okay. Can I camp onto that, please?
Yes, go ahead, Gina.
So maybe speaking of, and it was it's actually true. I don't think we've done nearly as many surveys this year as we did last year. So maybe we could get some community feedback on the remote academy. And then the other point of
clarification that I'd like to see added to that agenda item was, I thought in a conversation we had at a board meeting that it was stated, and I went back and to try to find it, that it was acceptable, homework coming from the teacher would not be graded because the remote academy would be the grade for our students in academy. But if they wanted it as supplemental, I had thought we had said we were going to be passing that along. And I've heard mixed feedback on whether or not that was being consistently executed throughout the district.
Okay, we can bring that up in the.
Yeah,
That
I
would be
agree.
helpful.
That definitely a point, because I remember that same conversation.
Okay, I agree with Rich and Gina. An update would be great on Remote Academy, and seeing input from our community as well is important. Any other new topics? Okay, seeing none, if we could take, I believe, a motion to close the open session.
Madam Secretary?
No, we don't have to go back and close it. We can motion to adjourn the meeting.
Yes, motion to adjourn this meeting.
Madam Secretary?
Yes.
I move that we adjourn the meeting.
Second. Okay, thank you, Gina. Thank you, Rich.
All in favor?
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Thank you. That's 5-0. Good evening, everybody. Thank you.